Long, what if one courageous decision could save an entire nation? Hidden within the splendor of the Persian Empire is the remarkable story of a young orphan whose faith and bravery changed history forever. She was not born into royalty. She had no army and no political power. Yet when darkness threatened God's people, she chose courage over fear. This is the unforgettable story of Esther, a queen whose life reminds us that God is always at work, even when his name is never mentioned. Stay until the end to discover how one woman's faith became the turning point for an entire nation. Long ago, the Persian Empire stretched farther than anyone could imagine. From India to Ethiopia, countless cities, villages, deserts, forests, and mountains lay under the authority of one man, King Ahasuerus. His magnificent palace in Susa sparkled with marble floors, golden decorations and luxurious gardens filled with fragrant flowers and flowing fountains. Every visitor was amazed by its beauty. The king possessed enormous wealth and unmatched power. Nobles and governors from every province gathered before him, eager to witness the glory of his kingdom. It seemed that nothing could threaten such greatness, but beneath the dazzling surface, events were unfolding that would change history forever. To display the riches of his kingdom, King Ahasuerus held an extraordinary banquet lasting 180 days. Guests admired walls decorated with precious stones, elegant white curtains flowing in the breeze, and golden goblets filled with the finest wine. Music echoed through the palace halls as laughter filled every room. Servants hurried from table to table, carrying delicious food prepared for nobles from across the empire. As the celebration reached its height, the king made a request that would set an unexpected chain of events into motion. He ordered Queen Vashti to appear before the guests to display her beauty. No one could have imagined what would happen next. When the king's servants delivered the royal command, Queen Vashti made a bold decision. She refused to come. Her refusal shocked the entire palace. Silence replaced the joyful celebration as the king's face filled with anger. His advisors warned that if the queen's disobedience went unpunished, women throughout the empire might follow her example. Determined to protect his authority, the king removed Vashti from her royal position. The throne beside him became empty. No one realized that this empty throne was preparing the way for God's perfect plan. Soon, royal messengers traveled across the empire searching for beautiful young women to bring before the king. From distant villages, bustling cities, green valleys, and desert towns, hundreds were gathered and taken to the palace in Susa. Among them was a humble young Jewish woman named Esther. She had lost both of her parents while she was still a child. Her older cousin, Mordecai, had lovingly raised her as his own daughter. Though her life had been marked by loss, Esther possessed a gentle spirit, quiet wisdom, and uncommon kindness. Each day, Mordecai waited near the palace gates, hoping to hear news of the young woman he loved like family. He also gave Esther one important instruction. Do not reveal that you are Jewish. She trusted his wisdom without knowing how important that secret would soon become. As the days passed, Esther quietly prepared for the moment that could change her life forever. While many sought to impress with expensive perfumes and elaborate jewelry, Esther chose humility and wisdom. She listened carefully to the advice of Hegai, the king's trusted servant, and carried herself with grace. When her turn came to stand before King Ahasuerus, the palace seemed to grow still. The king looked upon Esther and immediately recognized something extraordinary in her. It was more than beauty. It was dignity, kindness, and quiet strength. Moved with admiration, the king placed the royal crown upon her head and declared Esther the new queen of Persia. Trumpets echoed through the palace as a magnificent celebration began. Across the kingdom, people rejoiced without knowing that God had positioned Esther for a purpose far greater than anyone could imagine. While Queen Esther settled into her new life in the palace, Mordecai continued his daily routine near the king's gate. Though he held no great title, he remained faithful and watchful. One day, as he stood nearby, he overheard two royal guards whispering in secret. Filled with anger toward the king, they plotted to assassinate him. Realizing the danger, Mordecai acted without hesitation. He sent word to Queen Esther, who immediately informed the king, giving credit to Mordecai. The plot was investigated and found to be true. The conspirators were arrested and punished, and the king's life was spared. The heroic act was carefully recorded in the royal chronicles. Yet strangely, Mordecai received no reward. It seemed forgotten. But God never forgets faithfulness. Not long afterward, a powerful official named Haman rose to prominence. The king honored him above all the other princes of Persia, granting him great authority throughout the empire. Wherever Haman walked, people bowed low before him. They honored his position and feared his influence. Everyone bowed. Everyone except Mordecai. Day after day, Mordecai remained standing. When questioned, he explained that his loyalty belonged to God alone. Haman noticed. His pride turned into burning hatred. What began as wounded pride would soon become a deadly plan against an entire nation. Haman could have punished Mordecai alone. Instead, his anger grew far darker. When he learned that Mordecai was Jewish, he decided that one man's death was not enough. He would destroy every Jewish man, woman, and child throughout the Persian Empire. Casting lots to determine the chosen day, Haman carefully planned his attack. Then he approached King Ahasuerus with deceptive words. "There is a people scattered throughout your kingdom," he said. "Their customs are different from everyone else's. It is not in your interest to tolerate them." Without realizing the truth, the king removed his royal signet ring and handed it to Haman. With that single gesture, Haman gained the authority to seal a decree of destruction. Across the empire, messengers raced on horseback, carrying the terrible news. As the decree spread from city to city, fear gripped the Jewish people. Families gathered in tears. Mothers held their children close. Fathers lifted desperate prayers to heaven. Throughout the empire, mourning filled the streets. People dressed in sackcloth and covered themselves with ashes as they cried out to God for mercy. Outside the palace gates, Mordecai tore his clothes and wept bitterly. Queen Esther heard that her beloved cousin was mourning. Concerned, she sent fresh clothing for him, but Mordecai refused to accept it. Instead, he sent Esther a copy of the king's decree. For the first time, she fully understood the danger facing her people. Mordecai sent one final message to Queen Esther. "Do not think that because you live in the king's palace, you alone will escape." Then he spoke words that have echoed through history, and who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Esther understood the weight of those words. Approaching the king without being summoned could mean certain death. Only if the king extended his golden scepter would her life be spared. Fear filled her heart, but faith began to rise. She made her decision. "Gather all the Jews in Susa," she said. "Fast for me for 3 days and 3 nights. My servants and I will fast as well. Then I will go to the king, and if I perish, I perish." With those courageous words, Esther stepped into the purpose God had prepared for her. For 3 days and 3 nights, the Jewish people sought God's mercy. Throughout the city of Susa, families humbled themselves in fasting and prayer. Though the book of Esther never directly mentions God's name, his presence was evident in every moment. As the sun rose on the 3rd day, Queen Esther prepared herself. She put on her royal robes not to display her beauty, but to fulfill the purpose for which she had been placed on the throne. Every step toward the king's court was a step of faith. She knew the law. Anyone who entered the king's presence without being invited could be put to death. Yet Esther chose obedience over fear. The palace guards watched in silence as Esther entered the inner court. Their eyes widened. No one dared to speak. King Ahasuerus looked up from his throne. For a long moment, everything seemed to stand still. Then the king smiled. He stretched out the golden scepter toward Esther. Her life was spared. The king asked, "What is your request, Queen Esther? Even if it is half my kingdom, it will be given to you." But Esther did not reveal everything at once. Instead, with wisdom and patience, she invited the king and Haman to a special banquet she had prepared. God's perfect timing was unfolding. That evening, the king and Haman joined Esther at an elegant banquet. The tables overflowed with fruit, bread, roasted meats, and fine wine. Music played softly as servants attended their guests. Again, the king asked Esther, "What is your petition? Tell me, and it shall be granted." But Esther waited. Instead of revealing Haman's plot, she invited both men to return for another banquet the following day. Haman left the palace filled with pride. Of all the nobles in Persia, he alone had been invited to dine privately with the king and queen. He believed he had reached the highest honor imaginable, but he had no idea that his downfall had already begun. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating beautiful cinematic Bible stories that inspire people around the world. Thank you, and now let's continue the story. As Haman returned home, joy filled his heart. But when he passed through the king's gate, he saw Mordecai standing once again. Mordecai still refused to bow. Instantly, Haman's happiness turned into fury. At home, he boasted about his wealth, his power, and his invitation to the queen's banquet. Yet he confessed that none of it satisfied him, as long as Mordecai remained alive. His wife and friends offered a cruel suggestion. "Build a gallows," they said. "Tomorrow morning, ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai." The idea pleased Haman. That very night, workers began constructing the towering gallows. He believed victory was certain. But heaven had another plan. While Haman dreamed of revenge, something unexpected happened inside the palace. The king could not sleep. Hour after hour, rest refused to come. To pass the time, he ordered the royal chronicles to be read aloud. As the servant read, one forgotten record caught the king's attention. It described how Mordecai had uncovered the assassination plot years earlier and saved the king's life. The king interrupted. What honor was given to Mordecai for this? The servants answered, "Nothing has been done." At that very moment, God was turning the story in a completely unexpected direction. Early the next morning, Haman hurried to the palace. He intended to ask permission to execute Mordecai. Before he could speak, the king asked him a surprising question. What should be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? Certain that the king meant him, Haman described a magnificent celebration. Let the man wear the king's royal robes, ride the king's own horse, and be led through the city, while everyone proclaims, "This is what is done for the man whom the king delights to honor." The king smiled. "Excellent," he said. "Go at once and do exactly as you have described." For Mordecai, Haman's heart sank. The man he hated most became the man he was forced to honor before the entire city. The proud official walked through the streets leading Mordecai's horse, announcing his honor. The tables had begun turnaround. The following day, the king and Haman returned to Queen Esther's banquet. The atmosphere was peaceful, but Esther knew this was the moment that would determine the fate of her people. Once again, King Ahasuerus looked at Esther with kindness and asked, "What is your request, Queen Esther? Even up to half of my kingdom it will be granted." Esther took a deep breath. "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, spare my life and the lives of my people. We have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king's face changed instantly. Who would dare do such a thing? Esther slowly turned toward Haman. The adversary and enemy. "Where's this wicked Haman?" The room fell silent. Haman's confidence vanished in a single moment. Filled with anger, the king left the banquet hall and walked into the palace garden to consider what he had heard. Haman realized his life was now in danger. Desperate, he threw himself at Queen Esther's couch, begging for mercy. At that very moment, the king returned. Seeing Haman fallen near the queen, he misunderstood the scene and cried, "Will he even assault the queen in my presence?" Immediately, the palace guards covered Haman's face. Then one of the officials spoke. "Your Majesty, the gallows Haman built for Mordecai still stand outside his house." The king answered without hesitation, "Hang him on it." The very trap Haman had prepared for another became the instrument of his own judgment. Justice had prevailed. Although Haman was gone, the king's decree could not simply be erased. The king gave his royal signet ring to Mordecai, placing him in Haman's former position. Together, Queen Esther and Mordecai wrote a new decree. It allowed the Jewish people throughout the empire to defend themselves against anyone who attacked them. Royal messengers mounted swift horses and rode across mountains, deserts, forests, and rivers, carrying the good news. Where fear had once spread, hope now followed. The people who had prepared for destruction now prepared for deliverance. When the appointed day arrived, God's people stood together with courage. Across the empire, their enemies were unable to overcome them. The Lord turned mourning into rejoicing and fear into victory. King Ahasuerus honored Mordecai, dressing him in royal blue and white robes with a great golden crown. Throughout the city of Susa, joyful celebrations filled the streets. Music echoed through the air, children laughed, and families embraced with grateful hearts. The Jewish people remembered that even in the darkest moments, God had never abandoned them. To ensure that future generations would never forget God's deliverance, Mordecai established a yearly celebration called Purim. Each year, families gathered to remember how sorrow had been turned into joy and how despair had become hope. Though God's name is never mentioned in the book of Esther, His hand is visible from beginning to end. He guided every event. He opened every door. He transformed every impossible situation into a testimony of His faithfulness, a message of hope. The story of Esther reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to do what is right even when the cost is great. Esther was an orphan who became a queen. Mordecai was a forgotten servant who became a trusted leader. Haman's pride led to destruction, but humility and faith led to victory. Perhaps today you are facing a challenge that feels overwhelming. Like Esther, you may wonder why you are where you are. Remember these timeless words. Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther 4:14. God can place ordinary people in extraordinary situations to accomplish His purposes. Trust His timing, remain faithful, and never underestimate what He can do through a willing heart. If this story encouraged you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope today. May God bless you, strengthen your faith, and remind you that He is always working, even when you cannot see Him. Before you go, if this story inspired your heart and strengthened your faith, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful Bible story. Share this video with your family and friends so they too can experience the hope, courage, and faith found in God's Word. Thank you for watching, and remember, with God, no situation is beyond redemption. We look forward to seeing you in our next Bible story. God bless you.